Ever been to the lake, wanted a good cigar, but couldn't find any good sticks besides gas station garbage? That was basically my entire existence at the lake until Southern Cross Cigars showed up in Camdenton. If you didn't know about them, you should. So let me introduce you to the owner and let him tell you all about it.
So as a Laker since 2012 personally, one of the biggest struggles I had here at the Lake of the Ozarks was finding a good cigar, a good place to get cigars, which didn't exist for me in this area, which we were in Camdenton, until Southern Cross Cigars came to town.
We're trying. We're not trying to be good, we're trying to be great.
And you are. I am here with Pat, who is one of the owners of Southern Cross Cigars. Pat, thanks for having us in today, man.
Thanks for coming by, Jeff. Appreciate it.
So Pat, what brings a guy to town, you and your wife here, and choose the Lake of the Ozarks, and more specifically, choose to open a cigar shop?
Well, I ended up here because my parents retired here. And at that point in time, I was having some stuff in my personal life that was leading me to want to get away from where I was. So I followed him here. And as for the cigar shop, well, I kind of received an ultimatum from my wife. She told me I was spending too much money on cigars and had to find a way to make money with them. So here we are.
That's a good reason to open a cigar shop. Background have anything to do with this?
Absolutely nothing. I'm a marine biologist in my professional life.
Marine biologist. So you retired from that.
Yep.
And now you become a cigar aficionado.
There you go.
Your love for cigars was just a personal cigar love. That's awesome. I imagine you came to town yourself and said, there's not a good selection. I need to put one in.
I struggled with that I lived here for many years before I opened this up. Again, just reached a certain point in life where I received the ultimatum and needed something to do. I was getting bored just hanging around. I devoted most of my time once I came up here to just being a dad and raising my kids. So I did that for a long time without doing much of anything in a money-making.
Yeah, that's a job in and of itself.
Yeah, very fulfilling. I'm glad I did it, but didn't pay the retirement fund very well. Those kids don't want to pay.
I know that all too well. This storefront here in Camdenton, what's the address here?
330 Highway 54 East.
If you're not familiar, right off 54, just down like literally a stone's throw from McDonald's, across the street from the new Papa's, very easily accessible, huge sign right there out there on the street. But this didn't exist first. You guys started by working festivals.
Working festivals out of pop-up tent.
So you're doing all the stuff down the strip, the bike fests, boat fests, all the things, right?
Yep.
Any local festivals in and around and all over Missouri, right?
Go to Kansas City for sales, get around as much as we can, yeah.
Awesome. So then you've evolved and you opened up this storefront. How long has it been here?
Been here for about a year now. But since we came in, we built the Humidor out.
Yep.
And that was a project. And the lounge area itself is still a work in progress.
Right. And so the building itself, you've got currently 2 lounge areas with very comfortable couches, some big TVs. You've got the Humidor itself, which you'll see. And then you've got another room that has lockers, which I'll ask you about here in a second. And you just recently built on an outdoor patio.
Yep. Patio and gazebo. Yep.
So that's going to be an area where people can come hang out. You put a grill out there.
There's a grill out there that's available for use.
Awesome.
And a nice smoking area, fire table for in the fall when you want to roast marshmallows or anything like that.
Perfect. Stay warm. Now, I mentioned the lockers. Explain how that's going to work.
Once we get it all together, we're going to be renting out lockers so you have a place to stash your cigars. And with the locker rental, you will get 24/7 access to the lounge with a key fob. So you'll have a place to come and smoke at midnight if your wife gets
So I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm bored. I want to smoke a cigar. I can come in here and pull from my own stash.
Yep.
Can't get access to the humidor.
The humidor will be locked.
But my
up.
own locker. I can come up here and sit here, watch the whatever's on TV in the middle of the night.
There you go.
Fantastic. Now, you also have mentioned that you're working on getting not a liquor license. You're not going to serve liquor, but a license to where we can bring our own.
Yep. We're working on that at this point in time. That should be squared away in the next couple months. Then you'll also be able to stash a bottle down in the locker if you rent a locker, and you'll be able to drink and smoke. And
so if your wife's anything like mine, or spouse has anything like mine, and you need to leave the vicinity of your home because she doesn't like the smell of how strong it is, you've got a place to come, and you can also go ahead and hide your expensive bottle of bourbon here too. Not that we're trying to give you any ideas. Now, let's get to the most important topic at hand here, the selection of cigars.
I like to think we've got the best selection in the area, and I think I'm right on that one. But
Yep. I would 100% concur. There's not a lot of cigar shops of this size, even in bigger cities. And so this is a fantastic one. Now, as we talk about the selection of cigars, you guys run the gamut. What are kind of the price ranges on your cigars here?
We've got stuff ranging anywhere from about $2 on up to $35.
So on the lower end, what would be some of the brands that somebody could get? They don't want to spend more than, $8 to $10 a stick.
Got a wide range of $8 to $10 sticks. In fact, that's probably the vast majority of what we have in there falls into that price range.
So this is a good spot to come for somebody that likes a decent cigar, not the gas station cigar, but doesn't also have a big budget for cigars. Now, let's talk about the guy who has a good taste for cigars. What kind of selections do you have for that person?
all kinds of stuff. We've got a lot of La Flor Dominicana, LFT, Liga Privada, lots of Arturo Fuentes, Foundation, West Tampa Cigar Company.
I'm smoking a Bad Ash, which is a local to Missouri cigar.
Yep.
I also know there's a certain cigar brand that nobody else carries in the area that only you do, I think, all in the Midwest.
Pretty much,
which is Rodriguez
Cigars. Yep, and that's a Key West brand. Wonderful. They've been down in Key West since 1984. Make a great cigar, and Danny, the company owner, is a great guy, and he comes up and hangs out with us from time to time. And I go down there and hang out with him every possible chance.
I've talked to him multiple times. He enjoys the lake.
He's very fond of the lake area.
Yeah. So, and Danny comes up, as you said, regularly. Will you put that out like on your socials to let people know?
That on Facebook, and at some point early on this year, he's going to come up and we're going to do a pig roast out here, a Cuban style pig roast.
Fantastic. So pay attention to your socials. I encourage you, if you get a chance to meet Danny, not only to indulge in and buy some of his cigars because they're fantastic, but come up and just have a conversation with him because you'll learn a lot.
Very knowledgeable. He beats me hands down in cigar knowledge.
Okay, now, so we kind of talked about the selection of your cigars, and it runs the gamut from high end, you mentioned, go up to $35 all the way down to $2. Flavored cigars.
We have them.
So lots of selection there. Now, as we talk about education of cigars, I consider myself a novice. I've been smoking cigars for a long time because my dad is a cigar smoker, but just like my bottle taste, I'm not a low end drinker. I like a good $50 to $75 bottle of bourbon, but if I drink a $60 bottle of bourbon versus a $2,000 bottle of bourbon, I can't really tell a difference. Like, to me, it's not worth the difference. And I feel like I'd be the same way with cigars, but can you kind of explain that? Like, what is somebody going to notice in a difference in a cigar if they're smoking that $8 to $10 cigar versus the $35?
Well, a lot of it's always going to come down to personal preference. And I've had some $2 cigars that taste better to me than some $40 cigars I've smoked.
Really?
It's all got to do with what flavors you like, different things that are in the profile. A lot of the heavier ones, I like Maduro wrappers. And oftentimes you'll get a spicier blend up in there. You'll taste baking spice or nutmeg and things of that nature. Cinnamon, pepper is big. So you can look for a profile you like. And again, the higher end cigars use a wider range of tobaccos, better blend of higher end tobaccos and tobacco. There's such a wide range. The plant's not just the plant itself, but where the leaf was harvested from the plant itself. Lower leaves versus upper leaves.
Oh, really? On the plant itself?
On the plant itself, yep. So not every leaf on that plant tastes the same.
And so what's considered the better region of the plant? Low, high, mid?
It depends on what you're going for. A lot of times the larger leaves, top sections will be wrapper tobaccos, the outer covering of the cigar, and the rest will find their way into the filler in the binder.
Okay.
Which is the inner.
You mentioned Maduro, the color of the cigar. And as you're talking about these different flavor profiles, I'm thinking wine, coffee. So I guess cigar kind of falls into that same category. Now, how would you explain the difference between a dark wrapper versus a light wrapper? Is it like coffee where the darker the bean versus the lighter the bean can have a different concentration of caffeine? Like, how does that work?
It can be more flavor in the darker, but that's not always the case. Some dark wrappers are fairly mild in flavor profile, and I've had some Connecticut light wrappers that are pretty flavorful.
Really? Okay.
The color doesn't tell you everything about it. You can't judge a cigar just by the color.
So it ultimately comes down to personal preference. Interesting. There's not necessarily a stronger cigar just because it's darker cigar.
Yeah, it's not a one-to-one relationship in that regard.
Okay.
Generally, darker tends to be stronger in flavor profile and probably in nicotine as well. But again, difference between cigars and cigarettes is cigarettes are a nicotine delivery system. Cigars are not. You're not smoking a cigar for the nicotine.
Right.
You're smoking that for the flavor experience, that aspect of it rather than the nicotine. So the aspect of whether it's stronger or not in nicotine is less of a consideration unless you get something that's loaded down with nicotine and you end up with a headache and dizziness. But
a big ass buzz, and you might even get yourself sick.
Yep.
Now that you mention that, it's a good question. I've got a 17-year-old stepson, and I've got some daughters in their 20s, and I've had them or their friends ask. Young person question to ask is, do you inhale a cigar? So when you're describing that to somebody, and I know most of the people watching this probably understand cigars, but let's just assume there might be somebody that doesn't. How would you describe that to them? Because the simple answer is no, but...
And that's really the only answer as far as I'm concerned. A cigar inhale will put you on your ass.
Yeah.
Again, it's a whole different ballgame from a cigarette.
Yeah. So it's like if you're used to smoking cigarettes or weed, which the entire intent is to inhale it, it's the exact opposite on a cigar.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, as we talk about kind of the education about cigars, there's also in the different colors and the flavors, there's also thickness. And you described this to me. What's the proper terminology for the thickness?
It's called ring gauge.
Ring gauge, as in like ring. And circumference. And so how does that change the complexion of a cigar, the thickness versus a thin cigar, et cetera?
It can change. You can have the same blend of tobaccos in a different size cigar and whatever whatever reason, the dynamic of how it draws and the whole thing can change the entire flavor profile.
So it doesn't necessarily mean a thicker cigar is necessarily a stronger cigar.
No.
That's pretty fascinating, because you would think just the sheer quantity of what's inside of it, it would make it stronger.
You can get a higher volume of smoke, which again is part of the rest of the experience. You're not inhaling it, so it's not going to change that much. But sitting there in a big cloud of smoke, you feel cool. So if you're producing high volumes of smoke,
if that's what you're after, you want the thicker cigar.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. And I guess obviously the draw is also going to come down to the cut.
Yep.
Which there's different ways you can cut a cigar.
I prefer a V cut. Some guys like a flat cut.
And that's, we're talking about something like this, right? But now I would say the average cigar smoker probably just carries around
pocket cutter.
Pocket cutter, yeah. What's your opinion? That's just a pretty standard cut.
Yep. Well, I got a V cutter on mine. I carry so much stuff in my pockets that if I ever fall off a boat, I'm going to the bottom with all my cigar gear. So
got it.
I have a quantity of gear that would defeat any life jacket on the market.
Well, you're unique in that regard. Now, when it comes to the actual cut, do you have a recommendation? I mean, you said you prefer V-cut.
I like the V-cut.
Why? Is it because it's cleaner? What?
I like the way it looks, and it does. I like the draw, and that's what I've grown accustomed to. So it does change how the cigar draws. The V-cut, it seems counterintuitive, but it does pull from a wider surface area of the cigar.
Really?
So you're not just pulling off the flat end. But I mean, I guess that's a geometry problem at some point.
That's science. Awesome. And you do carry more than just cigars here. Carry various cigar accessories.
We have cutters, lighters, ashtrays, humidors, humidor humidification stuff.
You've got the little
Bovita packs.
Bovita packs, which have become very popular, and it's great in my golf bag. But as you had mentioned, it also is a very useful source for a humidor as well, right?
Yeah, it's a much easier way to take care of your humidor.
Versus putting the water, filtered water and all that kind of stuff.
All that stuff into a exposed humidification system. It's just one wears out, you just open up a new pack and throw a new one in and you're done.
And so that small pack, is that adequate for the standard just table size humidor?
We've got several different sizes. The small ones tend to be more for like your travel humidors.
Okay.
Then there's an intermediate size that takes care of your regular desktop humidor. And then we've got some big box packs that we use. We used to use them on our cabinets before we got the walk-in humidor, and we use those in humidors that we have at various bars and other locations around the lake, which are a little bit higher volume. And I'm not down there to check them every day, so I put one of those in there. I know I'm good for a few months.
Somebody who has a humidor, what is the proper humidity level inside of that humidor that they're looking for?
We try and keep it around 68% relative humidity.
What's too high? What's too low?
We run up to, sometimes it runs up to 72, 73 inside the walk-in. That's probably your upper end.
Okay.
And 68 is probably about as low as you want to keep it long term.
Got it. So about you're looking for a 68 to 72 humidity to
That's pretty much
to optimize the probably the shelf life of the cigar.
Yep.
Now, one other question that I would have for you that I've noticed, especially when I'm out on a golf course, is sometimes when I'm smoking cigars and I just have those pocket cutters, some cigars I get the inside of the cigar a lot more in my mouth, which annoys the hell out of me. I'm constantly, spitting it out. Is that a product of the cut? Is it a product of the cigar?
A little bit of each. The flat cuts have a tendency to put more tobacco in your mouth. The V cut, there's less the tobacco is disrupted on the outside. So probably one of the reasons I like the V cut. I don't end up with as much tobacco in my mouth.
Occasionally, if I don't have a cutter, I use a golf tee. Just poke a hole, but then you don't get a strong withdrawal.
Yep.
You're sucking for a lot longer to get that cigar down.
Cigars are supposed to be relaxing. They're not supposed to be work.
That's supposed to be work, yeah. That's very true. So Pat, thank you for having me in today. If somebody, again, let's mention where we are again. We're in Camdenton. Give us the address one more time.
330 East Highway 54.
Can't miss it. Big old Southern Cross cigar sign. Big old skeleton out there with a
Southern Cross shirt. Yeah.
Southern Cross shirt. Skeletons up here on the deck. A reason for that? Is that like a mascot?
It was fun for Halloween, and then we didn't have any place to store them afterwards, so they haven't gone anywhere yet.
Keep them out. Yeah. Why does it have to be just Halloween? Why the heck not? You might as well put a Santa Claus out there too while you're at it.
No, we just need Santa Claus hats for the skeletons.
There you go. There you go. Now, that's your physical location. If somebody want to call up here, see if you're open, what is the phone number? Also, what are the hours of operation?
Phone number is 573-836-0562. The official hours of operation are noon to 6, 7 days a week.
Okay.
I'm usually here by about 8 o'clock in the morning because I drop my boys off at school and then just come here instead of going home.
Got it.
So you can usually catch me here from 8 o'clock in the morning on.
Okay. Best to call ahead just in case. Plus,
just make sure because we do outside events.
I was just going to say, when you do outside events, nobody's manning the store.
Yep.
Got it. How about on social media? Where can we find you online?
We're on Facebook, Southern Cross Cigars, and we have a website that is southerncrosscigars.com.
And if I have anything to do about it, we'll put them on Instagram and TikTok as well. But that's a conversation you need to have with the boss, not with Pat.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And so if you want to stay hip to what's going on, where they're going to be, what events they're going to be at, when people like Danny are going to be here, when you're doing a pig roast, that'll all be posted to Facebook.
Yep, indeed.
So go follow Southern Cross Cigars. Well, Pat, this has been fantastic. Anytime I get to do work and sit on a couch and smoke a cigar, I don't really consider that work.
It's a good day. Yeah.
It is a good day. Thanks for having me, man. Hopefully next time I come, I can have a bottle of liquor in a locker.
Very good.
We can have some bourbon. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks, Jeff.